They laughed when her name came up in church whispers, sighed when her mother prayed for a miracle, and swiped past her face without guilt. Emily Carter had already been erased by the living, so no one noticed the night death itself chose her. Welcome back, my beautiful family and friends. If you're hooked in and you're ready to enjoy this story, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from, because tomorrow I will be giving you another story just as interesting as this one, and you don't want to miss it. Now, let us begin. Savannah, Georgia, liked to pretend it was gentle. The city wore charm like perfume, sweet on the surface, cloying if you stayed too long. Spanish moss draped over iron gates like old lace, hiding rusted bars beneath. Cobblestone streets promised romance to tourists, while quietly grinding down the feet of those who lived there long enough to be forgotten. Emily Carter had lived there all her life. At 32, she knew exactly how Savannah looked at her, or rather, how it didn't. She stood in the third pew at St. Augustine's Church that Sunday morning, hands folded over her stomach, the pale blue dress tugging slightly at the seams no matter how carefully she'd chosen it. Around her, women whispered about centerpieces and honeymoons, engagements announced with squeals and applause. Someone up front was getting married again, second marriage, third child, first grandchild on the way. Emily smiled when she was supposed to. She always smiled. Her mother sat beside her, lips pressed together, eyes forward. When the pastor spoke about patience and God's timing, her mother reached over and squeezed Emily's hand, not unkindly, but with the quiet weight of apology, as if to say, "I don't know why this hasn't happened for you." Emily knew why. She had known since she was 14 and overheard two boys behind the gym bleachers arguing over who would be dare to ask her out as a joke. Since 19, when her college roommate cried over heartbreak and told Emily, "At least you don't have to worry about boys hurting you." Since 27, when a well-meaning aunt said, "Men are visual creatures, sweetheart. You have such a beautiful face. If only you were less wide, less soft, less visible." Emily had tried. God, she had tried. She dieted until her hands trembled while refilling coffee at work. She joined gyms where mirrors screamed louder than trainers. She learned how to laugh at herself before others could do it for her. She learned how to shrink, her appetite, her opinions, her dreams of a small house with a porch swing and someone who reached for her hand in public. She learned how to be grateful for crumbs. That was what the matchmaker told her, anyway. The last one, a middle-aged woman with perfect posture and pitying eyes who closed her leather folder and said, "You have a lovely spirit, Emily, but perhaps your expectations are ambitious. Ambitious. For wanting a husband. For wanting to be chosen." The final blow came 3 weeks before Emily moved out of her childhood home. She had matched with a man online. Kind messages, slow conversations, laughter typed into little gray bubbles. He asked for a full-body photo. She hesitated, then sent one anyway, heart pounding, hands slick with sweat. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. Then a message came, "I don't think we're a good fit. Good luck, though." That night, Emily packed her things in silence while her mother cried in the kitchen, pretending it was about the empty room and not the empty future she feared for her daughter. The apartment above the closed bookstore wasn't much, but it was quiet. Dusty shelves still lined the walls downstairs, abandoned paperbacks frozen mid-story. The owner had died years ago. No one bothered to reopen the place. Emily liked that. It felt honest, like something that had been loved once and then left alone. She took the night shift at a 24-hour diner 3 blocks away, the Palmetto Grill. The lights were dimmer after midnight, the customers fewer and lonelier. Drunks, truckers, insomniacs. People too tired to judge. Emily wore her uniform like armor. Black pants, white shirt, hair pulled back. At night, no one asked about her love life. No one commented on her body, except to complain when she walked too slowly between tables. It was enough, until the man in red and black walked in. The bell above the diner door chimed softly at exactly 12:17 a.m. Emily looked up automatically, coffee pot in hand. He didn't belong. That was the first thing she thought. Not handsome, not strange, but wrong in the way a shadow falls at the wrong angle. He was tall, pale in a way that made the fluorescent lights seem harsh by comparison. His coat was deep crimson, almost black at the hem, tailored sharply against his frame. Black gloves covered his hands despite the Georgia humidity. His hair was dark, neatly pulled back, his eyes unsettling. Not because they were cold, because they were unbearably attentive. He saw her, not glanced, not assessed. Saw. Emily's breath hitched, stupid and traitorous. She hated that feeling, being aware of herself, of space, of flesh. She waited for the familiar flicker of disappointment to cross his face. It didn't. He took a seat in the far booth, back to the wall. Always the wall. Emily would notice that later. She approached with her notepad, pulse unsteady. "Coffee?" she asked. "Yes," he said softly. His voice was low, smooth, threaded with something old. "Thank you." She poured. Their fingers did not touch. Still, something passed between them, a quiet awareness like standing too close to a fire. "What brings you out so late?" she asked, the question automatic. He smiled faintly. "Hunger." Emily laughed before she could stop herself. "Join the club." His gaze lingered on her face, not her body. "You misunderstand. I am very particular about what satisfies me." She felt suddenly warm. She walked away, chastising herself. "Don't be ridiculous. Men like him didn't see women like you." But when she glanced back, he was still watching her, not with hunger that devoured, but with something that ached. Lucian Blackwood had not planned to come inside. He had passed the diner dozens of times before, drawn by the soft glow, the steady pulse of human life. He had resisted. He always did. Feeding was easier when faces blurred together, when he did not listen long enough to care. But tonight, he felt it. The pull. Not of blood, but of grief. He sensed her before he saw her. The way some souls carried sorrow like a second heartbeat. Ancient instincts stirred, ones he had ignored for centuries. When he looked up and met her eyes, something inside him fractured. Not because she was beautiful in the way the world demanded, because she was beautiful in the way the world punished. Lucian had watched empires fall for less cruelty than this quiet erasure. He had lived long enough to see standards change, and yet remain brutally the same. New masks for old sins. He knew what it was to be judged by appearances, to be feared, desired, reduced to myth. But Emily Carter had been reduced to nothing at all. And somehow, that hurt more. Night after night, he returned. Always after midnight. Always in red and black. Emily told herself it meant nothing. Regulars came and went. But Lucian stayed, sometimes for hours, nursing a single cup of coffee he never finished. They talked. About books. About Savannah. About loneliness, carefully disguised as weather or traffic or bad sleep. He never commented on her body. Never once. When she apologized for the pie being store-bought, he said, "You owe no one an apology for surviving." She went home that night and cried until dawn. Halfway through the month, whispers began. "Who's that man?" one waitress asked. "Looks expensive. Why is he always here?" Emily shrugged, heart pounding. For the first time, attention brushed against her like something dangerous. She was used to being invisible, but invisibility was safe. This felt like standing in sunlight without armor. One night, as rain lashed the windows and thunder rolled like distant war drums, Lucian leaned forward and asked, "Do you believe people are born deserving of love?" Emily froze. She had wiped that counter 1,000 times. Tonight, her hands stilled. "I think," she said slowly, "some people are born having to prove it." Lucian's eyes darkened. Something ancient and furious moved beneath his calm. "And do you think you have failed to prove it?" The question cut too close. Emily swallowed. "If I hadn't," she said, voice steady through practice, "someone would have stayed by now." Silence stretched between them, heavy and electric. Lucian stood. He removed one glove, just one, and placed it on the table. "You are wrong," he said quietly, "and the world will answer for teaching you that." Emily watched him leave, glove trembling beneath her fingers. If someone saw you the way Lucian looked at Emily, without hunger, without judgment, without conditions, would you trust it, or would you assume it couldn't last? The glove stayed on the counter long after Lucian left. Emily didn't touch it at first. She finished her shift on autopilot, refilling cups, wiping tables, nodding at customers whose faces slid past her without leaving marks. Her mind kept circling back to the same image, the way Lucien's eyes had darkened when she spoke, not with disgust or pity, but with something sharp and protective, like a blade drawn too fast. When the diner finally emptied and the cook disappeared into the back, Emily reached for the glove. It was warm. That made no sense. The air conditioning hummed relentlessly, and Lucien had been gone for nearly 20 minutes. Still, the leather retained a faint heat, as though it remembered his hand. She slid it into her bag before she could overthink it, heart beating faster than it should. Outside, Savannah slept uneasily. Rain slicked the streets, reflecting neon signs in fractured colors. Emily walked home beneath dripping balconies and shuttered windows, her steps echoing too loudly in the quiet. She felt watched, but not in the usual way that made her shrink. This was different, like awareness without threat. She locked her apartment door, leaned against it, and laughed softly at herself. Get a grip, Emily. He's just a man. But even as the thought formed, it rang false. She dreamed that night. She stood in the old bookstore below her apartment, shelves stretching impossibly high, books whispering to one another. Lucien stood at the center, red coat bright against the dust and shadows. He reached for her, not her body, but her chest, and when his fingers brushed her heart, it didn't hurt. She woke with tears on her cheeks and a strange sense of mourning, as if she'd lost something precious she'd never known she had. The next night, Lucien didn't come. Emily told herself not to notice. People disappeared from her life all the time. Dates, friends, possibilities. This was no different. Still, she found herself glancing at the door every few minutes, stomach twisting with something dangerously close to hope. By the third night, she was angry. At him, at herself, at the ridiculous ache in her chest that had no right to exist after a handful of conversations. She scrubbed a coffee stain too hard and snapped at a customer who complained about the wait. Sorry, she muttered, forcing her voice calm. Long night. He returned on the fourth night. The bell chimed, and Emily felt it before she saw him. Like a shift in pressure, the room subtly rearranging itself around his presence. He wore the same colors, red and black stark against the diner's muted tones. His gaze found her instantly. Relief surged, hot and unwelcome. I thought you'd forgotten us, she said before she could stop herself. Lucien paused, something like regret flickering across his face. I was ensuring restraint. She frowned. From coffee. From me, he thought, but did not say. They spoke cautiously that night, circling one another like wary animals. Lucien asked about her day, her childhood, the bookstore. He listened, really listened, as she spoke of dust and paper cuts and how she liked the idea that stories could wait forever for the right reader. You deserve a story that waits for you, he said quietly. Emily smiled, though something inside her tightened. Most stories don't. Outside the diner, Savannah's gossip mill began to churn. A man like that, expensive coat, foreign accent, sharp features, didn't go unnoticed. He was seen walking with Emily one morning when she locked up the diner, rain plastering her hair to her cheeks. Someone snapped a photo. It ended up in a group chat, then on social media. Who's he with? That can't be her. Must be a joke. Emily found out when her phone buzzed during her break. The messages piled up, concerned, curious, cruel. Her mother called. Emily, she said carefully, people are talking. They always do, Emily replied, exhaustion seeping into her bones. This is different. Men like that don't choose girls like me, Emily finished, voice steady. Silence. I just don't want you hurt, her mother whispered. Emily hung up and stared at her reflection in the diner's bathroom mirror. The same face, the same body, the same tired eyes. Nothing about her had changed, except someone had seen her. Lucien noticed her withdrawal immediately. You were wounded, he said that night, voice low. Who did this? No one, she lied. I'm used to it. He leaned forward, eyes burning. You should not be. The intensity of his gaze made her breath hitch. You don't know what it's like, she said softly. to be the lesson people learn before they choose better. Lucien rose abruptly, turning away as though restraining himself took physical effort. His hands clenched, gloves creaking. "I know exactly what it is like," he said, "to be reduced to a single trait, to be feared or dismissed without mercy. But there is a difference between monsters and cruelty, Emily." She flinched. "Monsters?" He turned back, studying her face as though weighing a truth too heavy to give. "Some monsters are honest about what they are." Before she could ask more, a group of college students entered, laughter loud and careless. The moment broke. That night, Lucien walked her home. They didn't touch. They stood beneath the flickering streetlight outside her building, rain misting the air. Savannah smelled like wet stone and secrets. "Why me?" Emily asked suddenly. The question had been coiled inside her for days, tightening with every smile, every look that didn't slide past her. Lucien was silent for a long moment. "Because," he said finally, "you endure without becoming cruel." Her laugh was brittle. "That's not exactly romantic. It is the rarest thing in the world." Something dangerous bloomed between them, possibility. Emily felt it and recoiled, instinct screaming. Hope had always been the sharpest knife. "People will talk," she said. "They'll tear this apart." "They already have," Lucien replied calmly. "Let them." She searched his face. "Why doesn't it bother you?" A faint smile touched his lips, sad and ancient. "Because I stopped seeking humanity's permission long ago." They parted without a promise, but Emily went upstairs feeling taller, heavier in the best way, as though she occupied space she'd always been denied. Lucien watched her window until the light turned off. He fed later that night, far from Savannah's heart, taking only what was necessary. Control had always been his pride. Now it was his penance, because wanting Emily was not hunger. It was something far more dangerous. Midway through the month, the whispers became louder. A woman at church stared openly. A coworker asked pointed questions. Online comments grew sharper, more inventive in their cruelty. Emily read them once, then deleted the app entirely. Still, the words lodged inside her. Who would choose her if given better options? What was wrong with him? How long before he realized his mistake? One evening, after a particularly vicious remark from a stranger who recognized her at the diner, Emily broke. "Maybe they're right," she said to Lucien, voice trembling. "Maybe you're just slumming it, proving a point." Lucien stood, eyes blazing, not with anger, but with grief. "You think I would mock you with affection?" he asked. "That I would cheapen what I feel?" "I think," she said, tears spilling now, "that everyone leaves when they see the whole picture." He stepped closer, close enough that she felt his presence like gravity. "I see it," he said softly, "and I stay." If you were standing where Emily stood, wounded by a lifetime of rejection, would you believe someone who said they chose you freely? Or would you wait for the moment they proved you right to doubt it? Lucien did not touch her. That restraint was his greatest mercy and his deepest curse, because the truth pressed against his ribs, desperate to be spoken. And when it finally came out, it would change everything. The first time Lucien told her the truth, he did it by not telling her at all. It happened on a Thursday night when Savannah was thick with heat, the air pressing down like a hell breath. The diner was quieter than usual. A storm was coming. Everyone could feel it. Emily wiped down the counter slowly, her thoughts louder than the clink of dishes. Lucien sat in his usual booth, posture still, eyes tracking her movements with that unnerving focus that made her feel both exposed and cherished. She had grown used to it, too used to it, if she was honest. Used to someone noticing when she was tired. Used to someone listening without waiting for his turn to speak. Used to the way silence between them never felt empty. "Come with me," he said suddenly. Emily paused. "Where?" "Outside the city," he replied. "Just for a while." Her first instinct was fear. Not of him, but of wanting, of stepping outside the narrow life she'd built to survive disappointment. "I have work," she said, gesturing weakly. "You finish in 20 minutes, he said gently. "I will wait." She studied his face, searching for something reckless or predatory. She found neither. Only patience. That scared her more. "All right," she said, "but just for a drive." The rain began as they left Savannah, fat drops streaking across the windshield. Lucian drove an old black sedan that hummed softly, like it was barely trying. Emily sat with her hands folded in her lap, hyper-aware of the space she occupied. They passed moss-draped oaks and shuttered houses, then fields that stretched dark and endless beneath the storm clouds. The farther they went, the lighter Emily felt, like the city's judgment was a weight she'd finally set down. Lucian pulled onto a gravel road, leading to a clearing near the river. He cut the engine. Rain whispered against the roof. "This place," he said, "is where I come when the noise becomes unbearable." Emily stepped out, breathing in damp earth and pine. The river moved slowly nearby, black and reflective. The world felt ancient here, untouched by gossip and screens. "You live alone," she said, more observation than question. "Yes." "Lonely?" He considered. "Not until recently." Her heart stumbled. "Lucian," he turned to her, expression solemn. "There are things about me you do not know." The words hung heavy between them. Emily's pulse quickened. "Everyone has things. Mine are consequential." She laughed nervously. "You're not married. You're not secretly rich, are you?" His mouth twitched, almost a smile. "Those would be simpler truths." Thunder rolled in the distance. She crossed her arms, suddenly chilled. "Then what are you saying?" Lucian took a step closer. The air seemed to thicken around him, the rain slowing, the night bending inward. "I'm not human," he said. Emily stared at him. Then she laughed, a sharp, incredulous sound that echoed off the trees. "That's not funny. I'm not joking." She shook her head. "Lucian, I don't need mystery. I need honesty. This is honesty." The storm broke fully then, rain pouring down in sheets. Emily backed away, panic blooming. "You expect me to believe you're what? A vampire?" Lucian closed his eyes briefly, as if bracing himself. When he opened them, they glowed faintly, red beneath the darkness, like embers stirred to life. Emily's breath caught painfully in her throat. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no. I've lived for centuries," he said quietly. "I drink blood to survive. I do not age. I cannot die as you do." Her legs trembled. She gripped the door of the car for balance, mind racing. This was too much, too strange, too perfectly absurd. "I should go," she said. "Take me back." Lucian did not move. "I will. But first, I need you to know something." She looked at him, tears mixing with rain. "What?" "I have never fed on you," he said. "Not once. Not even when you bled your finger at work. Not even when your pulse quickened near me. Because what I feel for you is not hunger." Her chest ached. "You're sick," she said weakly. "This is some kind of—" "Emily," he said, using her name like a vow. "I could compel you. I could cloud your mind and take what I want. I have not. I will not." Silence roared between them. She searched her memories, his restraint, his distance, the way he never touched her unless invited, the way he always sat with his back to the wall, the way he never ate. Fear warred with something else, something dangerous. "If this is true," she whispered, "then why me?" Lucian stepped back, giving her space. "Because you saw me before you knew what I was, and you did not turn away." Emily laughed again, this time broken. "Everyone turns away eventually. I did not." Lightning split the sky, illuminating him fully. Red coat soaked, eyes burning, posture impossibly still. He looked nothing like the monsters of movies. He looked lonely. "I need time," she said. He nodded immediately. "You will have all of it." He drove her home in silence. When she stepped out of the car, she paused. "Lucian," she said without turning, "if you're lying, if this is some elaborate joke, I would deserve your hatred," he finished, "and I would accept it." She went upstairs and locked the door, heart pounding. Sleep did not come easily. She dreamed of blood and light and standing in front of a mirror that finally showed her whole, flaws and strength intertwined. She woke before dawn, exhausted and shaken. Days passed without Lucian. Emily tried to return to normal. She failed. At work, the diner felt smaller, louder. Conversations scraped against her nerves. At church, the whispers sharpened. Someone had seen her leaving town with him. Someone else had guessed his nature. Rich man slumming it. Fetish joke. Her mother confronted her over coffee. "You need to be careful," she said, fingers tight around her mug. "Men who choose you out of nowhere, they're hiding something." Emily swallowed. What if he isn't? Her mother sighed. Men like that don't stay. That night, alone in her apartment, Emily stood in front of the mirror and studied herself. The softness she'd been taught to hate. The stretch marks that told stories of survival. The eyes that still hoped, despite everything. Was she really willing to believe in monsters before believing she was worthy of love? Lucien watched from a distance, every instinct screaming to return, to explain more, to reassure her. He didn't, because choice mattered. 3 nights later, Emily went looking for him. She drove past the river, heart in her throat, rain threatening again. She found him standing at the edge of the clearing, red coat stark against the dark. "You left," she said. "I did," he replied. "As promised." She took a shaky breath. "I don't know if I believe you." He nodded. "Reasonable." But, she continued, "I know how you made me feel. And that was real." Lucien looked at her like she had just saved him. "If you could choose," she asked quietly, "a normal woman, someone beautiful by their rules, why didn't you?" He stepped closer, stopping a careful distance away. "Because I have watched beautiful people be loved for centuries," he said. "And I have watched souls like yours be starved. I choose defiance." Her throat tightened. "You could hurt me." "Yes," he said honestly. "And you could destroy me." They stood there, rain beginning to fall again. If someone you loved carried the power to ruin you completely, but chose restraint every time, would that make them more dangerous or more worthy of trust? Lucien reached into his coat and pulled out his glove, the one he had left behind. "I trust you," he said, placing it in her hands. "With my secret, with my life." Emily closed her fingers around it, leather warm once more. For the first time, she did not feel like the lesser choice. She felt chosen. Savannah did not forgive secrets easily. By the time Emily woke the morning after the river, the city already seemed to know something had shifted. Not the truth, not vampires and centuries in blood, but change. And Savannah had always punished women who changed without permission. The first sign came at work. The Palmetto Grill was unusually quiet when Emily arrived for her shift, the air heavy with that particular tension that came from conversations stopping the moment you entered a room. The cook didn't look up. One of the waitresses, Trina, usually friendly in a distracted way, offered a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. Emily tied her apron slowly, pull steady only because she had learned how to endure. "What's going on?" she asked finally. Trina hesitated, then sighed. "You didn't hear?" "Hear what?" "There's a post going around. About you." "About him?" Emily's stomach dropped. She didn't need to ask which him. Trina slid her phone across the counter, screen glowing. Emily stared down at a photo she recognized instantly. Herself stepping out of Lucien's car, rain-soaked, hair loose, face bare, and unguarded. The caption beneath it burned. "Some girls will do anything for attention. Even play pretend with a rich weirdo." The comments were worse. "He's obviously using her. Must be a fetish. Money can make people desperate. She should be grateful anyone looks at her." Emily pushed the phone back, hands trembling only slightly. "People are cruel," Trina said, not unkindly. "Just be careful, okay?" Emily nodded and went to the bathroom, locking herself into a stall before the tears could fall. She pressed her fist to her mouth, breathing through the familiar pain, the old ache of being reduced to spectacle, to rumor, to warning. She thought of Lucien standing in the rain, offering her his truth like an exposed throat. "I trust you." The cruelty hurt more now because something precious was at stake. That night, Lucien came to the diner earlier than usual. Emily knew the moment he entered. Her pulse spiked, not with fear, but with something steadier, recognition. He wore black tonight, the red confined to the lining of his coat, like a secret only visible when he moved. "They're talking," she said before he could speak. "I know," he replied calmly. "I felt a shift." She frowned. "You felt gossip?" "I felt hostility," he corrected. "It has a texture." She snorted despite herself. "Must be nice." He studied her face. "Did they hurt you?" The directness caught her off guard. She hesitated, then shrugged. Nothing new. Lucien's jaw tightened. You say that like it makes it acceptable. It makes it survivable, she said. They sat in silence for a moment, the hum of the diner filling the space. Then Lucien spoke again. There is something else you should know, he said. Emily stiffened. You going to tell me you sparkle in sunlight or something? His lips curved faintly. No, I burn. Her humor faltered. Burn. I cannot be exposed to daylight, he said simply. Not directly. It would destroy me. The reality of it settled heavily between them. She imagined the city in full sun, Savannah bright and merciless, and Lucien confined to shadows tonight. You've been alone a long time, she said quietly. Yes. And now, she asked, afraid of the answer. Now, I am less willing to be. Something in his voice made her chest ache. Emily reached across the table without thinking, stopping herself just short of touching his hand. Lucien, she said, lowering her voice. What happens if people find out? Really find out? They won't, he said. But if they do, you'll disappear, she finished. He didn't deny it. Anger flared suddenly, surprising her. You don't get to decide that alone. I have done nothing else for centuries, he replied softly. Emily leaned back, exhaling hard. I don't want to be another secret you abandon when it gets inconvenient. Lucien met her gaze, eyes dark and intent. You are not a convenience. The words settled into her bones, heavy and warm. Outside, the city continued its quiet judgment. At church the following Sunday, no one sat beside her. Her mother avoided the subject entirely, speaking instead of weather and grocery prices, fear hovering behind every word. Emily stopped shrinking. It was a small rebellion at first. She wore a dress she loved instead of one that hid her. She walked through Savannah with her shoulders back. When people stared, she did not rush. Lucien watched this change with something like awe. You are becoming dangerous, he said one night as they walked along the river, moonlight silvering the water. She laughed. To whom? To a world that profits from your shame. They stopped near the water's edge. Crickets sang. The city felt far away. Lucien, Emily said slowly, why haven't you touched me? The question hung between them, vulnerable and raw. He inhaled sharply. Because if I begin, I do not trust myself to stop. Her heart pounded, not with fear, but with something thrilling and terrifying. I'm not fragile, she said. I know, he replied. That is why this matters. He stepped closer, close enough now that she could feel the cold beneath his warmth, the restrained power coiled tight beneath his skin. He lifted one gloved hand, stopping inches from her cheek. Tell me to leave, he said, voice low. And I will. Emily searched herself. Years of rejection, the bruises left by words, the instinct to push away before being abandoned. Instead, she said stay. Lucien removed his glove slowly, deliberately, and cupped her face. His touch was cool, reverent, as though she were something sacred. Emily's breath caught. No one had ever touched her like this, not tentative, not testing, but certain. Their foreheads rested together. He did not kiss her. Not yet. Halfway through the night, as they sat together in the quiet, Emily spoke the question that had been circling her thoughts. If you could change me, she asked, would you? Lucien pulled back slightly, eyes fierce. Never. What if I asked you to? I would refuse. Why? Because the world has already tried to erase you, he said. I will not be another hand on the blade. Her eyes burned. You don't want me to be smaller? I want you to be exactly as you are, he said, and to take up more space. If you had spent your life being told to disappear, how would it feel to be loved by someone who demanded your expansion instead? The night shattered before dawn. They heard it first, a scream, sharp and sudden, cutting through the stillness. Lucien went rigid, senses flaring. Stay here, he said. But Emily was already moving, heart racing. They found a man near the riverbank, bleeding heavily, eyes wild with fear. A mugging gone wrong, blood soaked into the dirt. Lucien froze. Emily saw it then, the struggle written across his face, hunger warring with horror. She stepped in front of him without thinking. No, she said firmly, not like this. The injured man moaned, barely conscious. Emily called 911 with shaking hands, applying pressure like she'd seen 1,000 times on TV. Lucien turned away, fists clenched, breath uneven. Sirens wailed in the distance. Later, after the man was taken away alive, Emily found Lucien crouched near the trees, shoulders bowed. "I almost lost control," he said hoarsely. "But you didn't," she replied. "I wanted—" He broke off, shame heavy in his voice. "I wanted his blood." Emily stepped closer. "Wanting isn't doing." He looked at her, eyes red and haunted. "You should fear me." She shook her head. "I fear people who hurt without caring." Silence fell, thick and intimate. "You stood between me and hunger," he said. "Why?" "Because I trust you," she said simply. "And because I won't let the world turn you into the monster they already think you are." Lucien closed his eyes, a sound tearing from his chest, something between a sob and a vow. From that night on, Savannah's shadows seemed to press closer. The city whispered louder. The danger grew, but so did their bond, and neither of them could pretend anymore that this was temporary. The city struck back the way it always did, quietly first, then all at once. It began with a notice taped to the door of the apartment above the bookstore. Emily found it after a double shift, shoes aching, shoulders heavy. The paper fluttered slightly in the humid air, official and unforgiving. Notice of termination of lease. Reason: safety concerns / complaints from neighbors. Her hands went numb. Inside, the apartment felt smaller than ever. The books downstairs seemed to watch her through the floorboards, their abandoned stories heavy with unfinished endings. Lucien arrived an hour later. He didn't need to read the notice to understand. He felt her distress the moment he crossed into the building, like a pressure wave against his chest. "They're forcing you out," he said quietly. Emily nodded, staring at the wall. "I've lived here 3 years. I've never had a complaint. But now you are visible," he said, "and visibility invites punishment." Anger surged through her, sharp and bitter. "So what, this is my fault?" "No," Lucien said instantly. "This is theirs." She laughed hollowly. "That doesn't change anything." Lucien paced the small room, red lining flashing with each turn. "You can come with me." The words landed heavy. "With you?" she repeated. "Yes. I have a place. Outside the city. Protected." Emily's chest tightened. Safety sounded dangerously like surrender. "And disappear?" she asked. "Prove them right." Lucien stopped. "I would never ask you to vanish." "But you would," she said softly. "Just differently." Silence pressed down. Lucien looked at her then, not as something fragile, but as something formidable. "What do you want?" he asked. The question startled her. No one had ever asked it without an agenda attached. "I want," she said slowly, "to stop being chased out of my own life." The diner fell next. Not officially fired. No, that would have been too honest. Instead, her hours were cut, shifts reassigned, smiles replaced with silence. The manager avoided her eyes. "You're not a problem," he said, voice low, "but you bring attention." Emily nodded. She had learned how to accept soft cruelty. It still hurt. Lucien burned with it. He stood outside the diner that night, fists clenched, every predatory instinct screaming to bare his fangs at a world that devoured its gentlest people. "They want you small," he said when she joined him. "They want you apologetic." Emily leaned against the brick wall, exhausted. "They always have. Then let us deny them." She looked at him sharply. "How?" Lucien hesitated. "There are laws older than this city. Protections." Her mouth curved sadly. "You mean vampire laws?" "Yes." She laughed. "You're serious." "I am," he said. "There are sanctuaries, communities, places where humans are protected, chosen by our kind." The implication was clear. Chosen. Emily shook her head. "I won't be owned." Lucien stiffened. "I would never." "I know," she said quickly, "but power changes things. I've lived my whole life beneath it." They stood there, city noise humming around them. Emily thought of the lease notice, the empty shifts, the whispers. "If I say yes," she asked carefully, "would it be because I have no other choice?" Lucien's voice dropped. "That is the only answer that would make it wrong." Days passed in a strange limbo. Emily packed slowly, deliberately, refusing to rush. She applied for jobs she knew she wouldn't get. She attended church one last time and felt the weight of stairs like stones. Her mother finally spoke the truth she'd been circling. "You scare them," she said quietly over dinner. Emily blinked. "Me? You don't beg anymore," her mother whispered. "They don't know what to do with that." That night, Emily stood on the balcony of the apartment and watched Lucien below, shadowed and still. She realized something then, something terrifying and freeing. She was already paying the price for being chosen. The city didn't need proof. It only needed suspicion. She went downstairs. "I'll come," she said, but not to hide. Lucien's eyes searched her face. "Then to what?" "To build something they can't take away," she said. "With you, or without you." For the first time, Lucien smiled without restraint. They left Savannah before dawn. The road stretched long and empty, the city fading behind them like a bad memory. Lucien drove north, toward land that felt quieter, older. Emily watched the horizon change, fear and anticipation tangling in her chest. They arrived at a sprawling estate hidden behind iron gates and towering pines. Stone walls, low lights, silence that felt intentional. Inside, the house breathed history. "You're not the only human," Lucien said as they walked the halls. "Some are partners. Some are protected. All are here by choice." Emily stopped. "And if I change my mind?" "You leave," he said immediately. "No pursuit. No punishment." Her throat tightened. "You really mean that?" "Yes." For a moment, she saw it. The possibility of a life where she wasn't bracing for impact, where love didn't come with humiliation attached. That night, they stood on the terrace beneath the stars. Lucien did not touch her. "You are free," he said. "Never forget that." Emily stepped closer anyway. "If the world had treated you the way Savannah treated me," she asked quietly, "would you have survived without becoming cruel?" Lucien considered. "I did not." She nodded. "Then let's do better. Together." He bent his head, resting his forehead against hers, reverent as ever. Inside the house, eyes watched from shadows, not hostile, but curious. Ancient beings stirred, aware that something unprecedented had entered their world. A human woman who had been broken by man, and chosen by a monster who refused to break her further. Outside the gates, Savannah whispered and forgot her name. Inside, Emily began again. The estate did not sleep. Emily noticed it on the third night. How the walls seemed to listen, how footsteps whispered even when no one passed, how the air carried memory like dust. This place was not haunted. It was inhabited by time itself. She woke before dawn, instinctively, heart pounding as if summoned. Pale moonlight spilled through the tall windows of the guest room Lucien had insisted on giving her. Her things were unpacked neatly, but the room still felt borrowed, temporary. She wrapped herself in a robe and stepped into the hallway. Somewhere below, voices murmured. She followed them. The great hall opened beneath a vaulted ceiling etched with symbols she didn't recognize. Curving sigils that seemed to move when she didn't look directly at them. Candles burned without flicker along the walls. A long table dominated the center of the room. They were waiting. 5 figures sat in high-backed chairs, their attention snapping to her the instant she crossed the threshold. Their gazes were not hostile, but they were not gentle either. These are not people who had survived by kindness. Lucien stood at the head of the table, red and black stark against the stone. His posture was rigid, protective without being possessive. "She is awake," said one of the figures, a woman with silver hair braided down her back, eyes dark and sharp. "Good." Emily swallowed and stepped forward anyway. "I didn't mean to interrupt," she said, "but I won't pretend I didn't hear you." Lucien turned to her. "You should not be here." "I live here now," Emily replied. Her voice shook, but it didn't break. "If this place is part of my life, I won't be a ghost in it." A murmur rippled around the table. "Interesting," said a man with skin the color of parchment, voice like dry leaves. "Brave or foolish," said another. Lucien's jaw tightened. "Enough." The silver-haired woman leaned back, studying Emily openly. "You are the human." Emily resisted the urge to apologize for existing. "Yes, you know what he is," the woman continued. Yes. And you stay. Yes. Silence stretched. Why? The woman asked. Emily took a breath. Every instinct screamed to soften herself, to make the answer palatable. She didn't. Because my whole life, she said, people decided my worth before hearing my voice. They took up space I wasn't allowed to claim. Lucian didn't do that. If that makes me foolish, so be it. Something flickered in the woman's eyes. Amusement? Recognition? Your name? She asked. Emily Carter. The parchment-skinned man hissed softly. She speaks as if she belongs. Lucian said nothing, but something in his stillness vibrated with pride. The woman rose. I am Rowena Hale, and this council will decide whether you remain. Emily's pulse thudded. On what grounds? Rowena smiled thinly. On whether you're a liability. Lucian stepped forward. She is under my protection. Rowena's gaze snapped to him. That is precisely the concern. The tension thickened, ancient and sharp. Emily felt it pressing in from all sides, but beneath it, something else stirred. Curiosity, unease. Let me ask you something, Emily said suddenly. Every head turned toward her. If I weren't human, she continued, if I were thin, or immortal, or dangerous, would this even be a question? Silence. Lucian closed his eyes briefly. Rowena studied her for a long moment. You are not wrong, she said finally, which makes you dangerous in your own way. Emily nodded. I've been told. The council dispersed without another word. Lucian remained standing, shoulders tight. I didn't mean to cause trouble, Emily said softly. You did not, Lucian replied. You revealed it. Days passed under quiet scrutiny. Emily explored the estate. Gardens hidden behind stone walls. Corridors lined with portraits whose eyes followed her with interest rather than malice. She met others like her, humans who had chosen and been chosen. Some were caretakers, some partners, some survivors who had nowhere else to go. They watched her with cautious curiosity. At meals, she felt the weight of eyes. Not hunger, but evaluation. Lucian stayed close without hovering. He explained the rules. No blood freely given, no compulsion, no promises made lightly. Consent was law here, not courtesy. You built this, Emily said one night as they walked beneath lantern-lit trees. I helped, Lucian replied. Out of penance. For what? For surviving when others did not. She stopped walking. You don't owe the world your suffering. He looked at her then, something raw breaking through centuries of restraint. And yet, the world has collected it all the same. Halfway through the week, the attack came. Emily was in the West Garden when it happened, air thick with honeysuckle, the sound of cicadas droning. She felt it before she saw it, a pressure drop, a wrongness in the air. Then the screaming began. Shadows tore through the gates like living things. Vampires, but not like Lucian. Their movements were feral, eyes wild with bloodlust. Rogues, exiles, creatures who fed without restraint. Inside, someone shouted. Emily turned to run and collided with one of them. He grabbed her wrist, grip iron tight. Human, he snarled, fangs bared. You smell like permission. Panic flared, but something else rose beneath it. No, Emily said clearly. I don't. The rogue laughed, pulling her closer. He never got the chance. Lucian moved like lightning, red coat a blur, tearing the attacker away from her with a sound that echoed through the garden. The rogue hit the ground hard. Lucian stood over him, eyes blazing crimson, fangs bared. Touch her again, Lucian said, voice shaking with fury, and I will end you. The rogue spat blood. You've gone soft. Lucian's answer was swift and final. The attack ended as suddenly as it began. The rogues fled or were destroyed. Silence fell, broken only by Emily's uneven breathing. Lucian turned to her, horror flooding his expression. Are you hurt? She checked herself, shaking, uninjured. I'm fine, she said. But you... He backed away as if burned. You should not have been here. I live here, she said firmly. Remember? Rowena approached, eyes sharp. She looked from Emily to the fallen rogue, then back again. You did not run, she said to Emily. Emily swallowed. I was afraid. And yet, Emily said, voice steadier now. I've spent my life being chased. I'm tired of it. Something shifted. That night, the council reconvened. Rowena spoke first. You stood your ground. Emily met her gaze. So did Lucian. Yes, Rowena said slowly. And that may be the greater danger. Lucian stiffened. Say what you mean. I mean, Rowena said that you would burn this sanctuary to protect her. I would, he said without hesitation. A murmur rippled again, this time not displeased. Rowena turned to Emily. And would you leave if staying endangered others? Emily didn't answer immediately. This was a question Savannah had never asked her, only assumed. I would choose the path that causes the least harm, she said finally, including to myself. Rowena studied her, then nodded once. Then you may stay. Relief crashed through Emily, so hard her knees nearly buckled. Afterward, alone on the terrace, Emily and Lucian stood beneath a sky crowded with stars. You could have lost everything tonight, Emily said quietly. Lucian looked at her. I nearly did. She took his hand, fully this time, no hesitation. His fingers curled around hers, reverent and fierce. If loving me costs you your world, she asked, will you regret it? He answered without pause. If I lose everything else, but keep my soul, no. She squeezed his hand. Then don't lose that. They stood together in silence, the estate breathing around them, older, watchful, changed. Somewhere beyond the gates, the world that had rejected Emily continued on without her. Here, she was no longer invisible. If you were asked to choose between the safety of being unseen and the risk of being truly known, what would you choose and why? The question lingered in the night, waiting for an answer. The night Savannah finally came looking for her, Emily did not hide. She stood on the terrace of the estate as the cars arrived, black sedans rolling up the long drive like a quiet invasion. Headlights cut through the trees. Doors opened. Voices carried. They shouldn't be here, Lucian said, already moving, red coat catching the lantern light. This is protected ground. Emily watched the figures step out. Two men she recognized from the diner, a woman from church, a city council aide clutching a folder like a shield. Fear fluttered in her chest, but it did not take root. I knew they would, she said. They don't let go easily. Lucian turned to her, eyes dark with concern. You do not owe them anything. I know, Emily replied. That's why I'm going to speak anyway. He searched her face, centuries of caution warring with a new, dangerous instinct to trust her choices. At last, he nodded. I will stand with you. They descended together. The confrontation was messy in the way human confrontations always were. Half-formed accusations, righteous tones masking fear. You've been manipulated, one man said, eyes sliding over Lucian without meeting his gaze. This is a cult, said the council aide. We've had complaints. You disappeared. Her mother's voice cut through the noise, trembling and raw. Emily's breath caught, but she did not step back. I left, Emily said clearly. I wasn't taken. Her mother stared at her, eyes wet. They said you were in danger. Emily looked at Lucian, then back at the woman who had taught her to be small in order to survive. I was, just not from him. The aide opened her folder. Miss Carter, if you don't come with us voluntarily. Then what? Emily asked. You'll save me from choosing. The words landed harder than any shout. Silence rippled through the group. Lucian spoke then, voice controlled, resonant. This land is sovereign. She is here by consent. You have no authority. One of the men scoffed. You expect us to believe. Emily stepped forward. Believe what you want, she said. But understand this. I spent my life being pushed aside so others could feel comfortable. I will not do it again. Her mother took a shaky step closer. Emily, sweetheart. Emily met her eyes. I'm not broken, she said softly. I was just unheard. The truth cracked something open. Her mother's shoulders sagged. Tears spilled freely now, not of shame, but of grief. I wanted to protect you, she whispered. I know, Emily said. But protection that cost me my voice isn't love. No one argued after that. They left quietly, dignity frayed, certainty shaken. Savannah did not apologize, but it retreated. As the gates closed behind the cars, Emily exhaled a breath she felt she'd been holding her entire life. Lucien turned to her, written plainly across his face. You faced them without fear. I was afraid, she admitted. I just didn't let it decide for me. He took her hands, this time without restraint. You changed the balance tonight. Good, she said. It needed changing. The weeks that followed were not a fairy tale, but they were real. Emily found work on her terms, coordinating outreach between the sanctuary and nearby towns. She spoke openly about choice, about consent, about the quiet violence of exclusion. Humans came seeking refuge. Vampires listened. Some resisted. Some left. Lucien watched her become something he had not dared to imagine. A bridge. You were never meant to be hidden, he told her one evening as they walked the gardens, hand in hand. I know, Emily said, smiling. I just needed someone to see it first. The question they had been avoiding finally rose between them one night, heavy and inevitable. Emily, Lucien said, voice careful. There are paths ahead, some permanent. She nodded. I know. He did not offer transformation as temptation. He laid out truth, years, consequences, loss. He offered time. She chose time. For now, loving you doesn't require me to stop being human, she said. And loving me doesn't require you to make me immortal. Lucien bowed his head, reverent. Then we will choose each day. They did. Seasons passed. Emily's body did not change, but the way she occupied it did. She laughed louder. She spoke first. She danced, clumsy and free, beneath lanterns while ancient beings watched in quiet wonder. Lucien fed less, needing less violence to anchor him. He learned new hungers, gardens, books, the warmth of Emily's presence at dawn before he retreated from the sun. 1 year to the night after she left Savannah, they stood again on the terrace. I used to think being chosen meant being tolerated, Emily said. Or corrected. Lucien smiled. And now, she said, squeezing his hand, I know it means being celebrated without conditions. He knelt. Not an ownership, but an offering. Stay with me, he said. Not as refuge, as partner. Emily laughed through tears. I already am. They did not marry in a church or sign a contract written by men who would have erased her. They marked their bond in the way that mattered. Choice renewed, voice intact, love unashamed. Savannah eventually found another story to tell. Emily built her own, and a vampire in red and black, who had watched empires fall, learned that the bravest revolution was not eternal life, but shared dignity. In a world that had told her she was too much, Emily Carter became exactly enough. And that was the victory. If someone chose you without asking you to change, would you believe them? Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.